Hello and welcome to Devilsown methanol injection. Today, we will be running through the menu system of the DVS4, which will aid any user in understanding of how the controller works. The controller is only connected to power, the display, and variable boost source during this process. When the system powers up, you will be presented with the Devilsown logo, the controller model, and the firmware version number. During this time, if pump pressurization was valid and enabled, the pump or pumps would activate. Pumps cannot activate if a check valve is used and selected within the system settings menu. After a brief period, the main screen is shown and is running in standard mode. This has three options available: input gauge, duty cycle and diagnostics. Depending on the on-off button, the status LED will either show red for system off, or green for system running and monitoring. It shows blue when system is active. The system will only normally run and activate when in standard mode, unless switched off. It can also run under system mode, test system, so as to prime and fully run through function checks. This is so that any changes currently being modified within configuration and system settings do not affect the activation, until they are saved and returned to the standard menu. Button operation. As stated, the on-off button enables and disables the system from running. The up and down buttons will cycle the menu structure and modify any settings where required. The select, mode, save button has a variety of functions. A short press will enter and exit menu items. From standard mode, holding for 2 seconds will switch into configuration mode, notified with 2 beeps. From standard mode, holding for 4 seconds will switch into system mode, notified with 3 beeps. From either configuration or system mode, holding for 5 seconds will save settings and return to standard mode, notified by 5 beeps. This will be explained in more detail as we run through the menu process. Standard menu items input gauge. This displays the current value of the selected input. If the input type is set to boost or auxiliary map sensor, then the gauge values can be set to the following max values within the system menu: 0 to 20 psi, 0 to 40 psi, 0 to 60 psi, and 0 to 80 psi, external map sensor only. If the input type is set to auxiliary air flow meter or throttle position sensor, then the input gauge changes to 0 to 5 volts. A bar gauge is shown, which is dependent on the input value. The input is also shown as a numerical value as well. Duty cycle. This shows you the duty cycle of the pulse solenoid or race valve on Module 1 and Module 2. For this to show valid data, they need to be configured within the system menu. We will come back to this when correctly configured. Diagnostics. This is a quick visual representation of what pumps, solenoids, valves, level sensors are doing at any given moment. The input is shown as a numerical value at the top of the page. P is for pump. V is for solenoid or valve. L is for the level sensor. The number represents which module. When active, they are highlighted with a box surrounding the text. Enter the configuration mode by holding the mode button for 2 seconds. This is where the start and end points are configured for the solenoids and valves. Inputs will only be available depending on valve type selected and the number of solenoid valves available. The system cannot activate from this menu. The end value is where the system is at 100% duty cycle, technically fully on, so we treat these as the activation points for check valves and standard solenoids. When using pulse solenoids or race valves, the start point is where the system activates at 20% duty cycle. It is 20%, as below this value the nozzles have an inconsistent spray pattern. The system runs a calculated linear increase in the duty cycle from 20% start point to 100% end point. When using standard, pulse solenoids or race valves, then the pump activates at a calculated percent before the first activation point, so that the fluid is primed and up to pressure before the nozzle is due to spray, minimizing any delays. Exit the configuration mode by holding the Save button for 5 seconds. This will save settings and return to the standard menu. Enter the system mode by holding the Mode button for 4 seconds. This is where the system hardware is configured, where map sensors can be calibrated, and defaults can be restored. The system cannot activate from this menu, apart from within the test system. The system menu is adaptive, meaning it has menu items only available depending on other menu items. For example, if the number of valves is set to 1, then valve type for Module 2 is not available. Also, if valve type 1 is check valve, then pump pre-pressurization is not available. Let's run through the system menu in its default state to see what is and isn't available. Number of valves, set to 1. Number of pumps, set to 1. Number of tanks, set to 1. Valve type 1. Check valve. Level indicator 1, no. Failsafe 1, none. Valve type 2, not available. Level indicator 2, not available. Failsafe 2, not available. Pump 1 pre-pressurization, not available. Pump 2 pre-pressurization, not available. Input type, boost. Auxiliary input type, not available. Auxiliary voltage offset, not available. Auxiliary boost offset, not available. Auxiliary gain, not available. Max values, 2 bar, 29 psi. Low pressure 1, not available. Nozzle pressure 1, not available. Auto learn 1, not available. Low pressure 2, not available. Nozzle pressure 2, not available. Auto learn 2, not available. Calibrate, not available. Test system, only Module 1 pump available. Up and down button activates and deactivates pump 1. With these default values, the system is in its most simplistic form. The hardware would only consist of a tank, pump, and check valve. The system would activate at the default Module 1 endpoint, which is 10 psi. Let's go into more details on each of the settings to see exactly what this controller is capable of. Number of valves. When 2 is selected, the valve type Module 2 is available and set to check valve. Failsafe Module 2 is available and the endpoint 2 within configuration is also available. You will need an additional harness. Either the valve-only harness which only has the control for the valve and failsafe switch, or another full harness. Note, failsafe Module 2 pressure can be selected, but the cabling is not available on the valve-only harness. Number of pumps. When 2 is selected, the pump pre-pressurization Module 2 is available only if valve type Module 2 is a standard solenoid, pulse solenoid or race valve. You will need an additional full harness. The pump can be plumbed into the original tank or a new tank running a different mixture. Number of tanks. When 2 is selected, the level indicator Module 2 is available. You will need an additional full harness if you want to run a level indicator. Valve type Module 1. If standard solenoid, pulse solenoid or race valve is selected, then pump pre-pressurization Module 1 is available. If pulse solenoid or race valve is selected, then start point 1 within configuration is available. Level indicator Module 1. If set to yes, then the system will constantly monitor the fluid level on tank 1. If it detects low fluid, then it will display this on the screen. Note, the system does not go into failsafe if low fluid is detected, due to the dynamic nature of fluid under acceleration and deceleration. Failsafe Module 1. If set to switch, then the system monitors the pressure switch against timers to calculate low pressure and blocked nozzles. If set to pressure, then low pressure and blocked nozzle pressure Module 1 are available. It then monitors the system pressure against time constraints and the pressure values. If a fault is detected, then the system goes into failsafe for 10 seconds, the error is displayed on the screen, and the internal failsafe relay is activated. Valve Type Module 2. If standard solenoid, pulse solenoid or race valve is selected, then Pump Pre-Pressurization Module 2 is available. If pulse solenoid or race valve is selected, then Start Point 2 within configuration is available. Level Indicator Module 2. If set to yes, then the system will constantly monitor the fluid level on tank 2. If it detects low fluid, then it will display this on the screen. Failsafe Module 2. If set to switch, then the system monitors the pressure switch against timers to calculate low pressure and blocked nozzles. If set to pressure, then low pressure and blocked nozzle pressure Module 2 are available. It then monitors the system pressure against time constraints and the pressure values. If a fault is detected, then the system goes into failsafe for 10 seconds, the error is displayed on the screen, and the internal failsafe relay is activated. Pre-pressurization Module 1 and Module 2. If enabled, when the system is initially powered on, Pump 1 and/or Pump 2 will operate for 2 seconds, pressurizing the fluid lines to help with first activation. Main input type. If set to boost, it uses the inbuilt for-bar map sensor. This sensor can read air and fluid pressure, making it resistant to moisture in the line. If set to auxiliary, then auxiliary input type, voltage offset, boost offset, and gain are available. Auxiliary input type. If set to map, then there are extra max values available. For 0.5 bar, 65 psi. 5 bar, 73 psi. 5.5 bar, 80 psi. Voltage offset, boost offset, and gain are available. These values can be used within the calibrate function to match the map sensor to the correct boost value. If set to airflow meter or throttle position sensor, then only voltage offset is available. Auxiliary voltage offset. For an external map sensor, this is the voltage offset required at 0 psi. Some map sensors measure vacuum as well as positive pressure, so their 0 psi voltage would be well above 0 volts. This offset is the amount of voltage to remove from the signal to bring it in line with the system. Some airflow meters and throttle position sensors have a minor offset that would also need to be taken into consideration, usually around 1/2 volt. Auxiliary boost offset. This is a positive or negative boost value applied to the entire boost range to add or trim the value if required. Auxiliary gain. This is the gain or ramp rate required to align the boost value. It essentially changes the slope of the boost graph. Max values. These values set the max values displayed on the input gauge, as well as setting the max values available during endpoints within configuration. Note, if auxiliary airflow meter or throttle position is selected, it will display 5 volt only. Low pressure Module 1 and Module 2. When using a failsafe pressure sensor on Module 1 or Module 2, this is the maximum pressure required, so the system does not cause a fault when the system is active. If active and the system falls below this threshold, then it will put the system into failsafe. It will display the fault on the display and which module has caused the issue. Blocked nozzle Module 1 and Module 2. When using a fail-safe pressure sensor on Module 1 or Module 2, this is the minimum pressure required so the system does not cause a fault when the system has deactivated. If deactivated and the system is above this threshold, then it will put the system into fail-safe. It will display the fault on the display and which module has caused the issue. Auto Learn Module 1 and Module 2. When these are enabled, the system will monitor the highest and lowest detected pressure values over 5 activation cycles. It will then adjust these values to provide a margin of error and save them into low and blocked nozzle pressure. The system will then use these to monitor the system. The user can still edit these values if required. Calibrate. The screen is split in two, with the top half containing all the data from the internal map sensor, denoted by I, and the bottom half being the external map sensor, denoted by M. It shows sensor voltage, offset voltage and boost value as well as a boost gauge for each. Using the same boost source and adjusting the auxiliary calibration values, the external map sensor can be calibrated for use with this controller. Common map calibration values can be found on the Devilsown UK website. Test system. This test screen allows the user to cycle through tests via the up and down buttons to switch on various functionality and monitor level sensors. Note the step indicator in the top right-hand corner. There are a total of 10 steps available to test both modules fully, however some of the steps are not available depending on system configuration. As per the diagnostic screen from the standard menu, it shows the status of the pumps, valves, and level indicators on each module, as well as the test duty cycle. Warning: this is used for test purposes only, and should not be used on a fully fitted system, unless switching on pumps for priming only. Remove or disconnect nozzles before running tests. Failure to do this may result in catastrophic engine damage. In this example, we will run both modules. Module 1 will be fitted with a race valve, no level indicator, and Module 2 only a check valve, but have a level indicator. Note, there are no duty cycle stepped increases on Module 2, due to the check valve. Exit the system mode by holding the Save button for 5 seconds. This will save settings and return to the standard menu. If Restore Defaults has been selected, then please see Manual for the default values. Many thanks for taking the time to listen to this video, and we hope you have found it interesting. There will be more detailed information in the forthcoming videos as well as within the user manual. Please visit Devilsown UK for downloads and purchases.